Okay, so in this video, I'll be doing a deck list for Trickster. So this is the last of the 3 of the new rulers from set 3 that I'll be using. This deck is more of a fun deck. I don't think it'll be pretty competitive just because of certain cards that I think will pop up in a lot of different types of decks, especially because certain colors like Volnar or yellow and Atlas blue, and then will be pretty popular among different deck types. So this deck might get like utterly destroyed by some of those decks, but I think it's just a fun deck in general. And then it could be something that you work on later on, but I just wanted to show like a deck list that I would make for Trickster. So again, with Trickster, biggest cost in this deck is going to end up being 2. You could potentially run 3 costs that have like the reductions, but this one is not going to focus on that, and it's going to be focusing more on a military build. So the first card we have is Captain Liberty, which is going to be one of our legend slots. So we'll go over the different counters. There's not as many, so there's only 16 counters still in this deck, but 4 of them is going to be G&G armaments. So that means there are less targets for us to remove to bring back Captain Liberty. But this deck will focus on like keeping him out of like the damage, because he'll have like healing abilities as well as things to just pull him out of the damage zones. That way we can use him, because he'll be helped to use as a recurring like threat. We also have 3 Captain Zombie. So again, this is another recurring threat that can come in by DRing 3 zombie or military, and the deck is pretty much like almost 100% military, minus like whatever the counters are, and the ability to also destroy sets without your opponent being able to react to them is really good, as well as having 6 attack is really good for clearing power. Next we have 4 Private Daredevil Rhino. So this is a military, and then it has a touchdown of when it comes to play, you can choose 1 firepower event, a level 1 or less in your graveyard, and return it to your hand. So with Trickster, because you can't really return your counters to your deck because they'll get removed, returning to your hand is fine. And then we'll go over the different ones at the end when we go to the 1 cost and 0 cost firepowers that you can return. And we'll go over some combos that you can do with this card to kind of like heal him out of like the damage, and then like to end up gaining cards for Trickster. Then next we have 2 Viktor. So this is from set 1. So when it attacks, you deal 2 damage. And this card means that it has 6 clearing power, and then it can get more power or more damage with G&G armament, which we have later in the deck as well. Next we have 2 Craig Breach. This is from the starter deck for the zombie one. So it has a touchdown of when it comes into play, if you have another military in play, you can draw a card and then put a card from your hand on top of your deck. So this lets you kind of like set up with like your Trickster's ability. So like when it swings, if you want to like hit like a damage check or a counter, you can do that with him by setting it up, or you can even just do it where like you put a card on top that you don't want, that you're fine having pushed into damage. Next we have 4 Saburos. So this is, I think, one of the few non-counters that's not a military trait, but because it has the once per turn of whenever you are dealt damage, you can or when you yourself are dealt damage, you can restand him once per turn, and it's only like one. The ability itself is just a once per turn thing. You rarely ever use the other ability, but like if you really find it where your opponent has a lot of good things and you have like nothing else to lose because you have like very little, because we're using only like level 1s and 2s, our card power is not like, our card strength like individual is not very high, so using that ability and being fine with losing one of them is perfectly okay. So usually that ability doesn't use too much, just being used as like a double attack with 5 clearing power in this type of deck is pretty good. Next we have 4 Vilmas. So this one sometimes we can use to stop overdrive as well as touchdown abilities if we really need to. Sometimes it's hard to maintain like the 1 cost up because a lot of times we're tapping out for like the 2 cost, but sometimes when we play Saburo or if we play like one of our lower level cards, because there are quite a bit of zeros in this deck, having this is a good backup to stop some of those abilities that you don't want to happen for touchdown or for overdrive or for drive. Next we have 4 Private Recon Buck. So again, this is when it touches down or when it overdrives. You can look at the top card of your deck and you can put it on top or bottom of your deck. So this gives you just like some information. So like especially if you before you swing with like your rulers, you play this and then you look at the top and you see like it's a damage card or a counter that will trigger to like deal damage. It can kind of help you plan out your different attacks, knowing that you like have like that extra ability, or if you know that it's nothing that you can like just put in the bottom and tuck it so that way you have like a higher chance of hitting something. And then having 3 HP is pretty good because a lot of our level 0s are all like 2 power or very weak, so it's hard to like clear a lot of those 5 HP cards. Next we have 2 of each of the Spartan panzer and Yomajin aerial renjaku, but essentially they're both the same because they just have the energy booster ability of when you come into play, you can untap one of your energies. So this lets us keep up energies for like Vilma, as well as lets us play like 2 units that can be able to attack or deal damage when you like tap out for the 2 cost, and then you only have you know, like a 0 cost, so you can still use your summoning caps. You could probably just run like 4 of one of them, but I just like having like 2 of each. Just that like opponents, like for those that play like some other card games, sometimes you don't want your opponents to know like what your ratio is of different units. If they just see like different ones, they might think like you're running like 8 or 7 of them. But it's not something, but it's also like a preference where I just wanted like 2 red, 2 blue, since the deck has very little red base cards. So those are all of our units, and then after that we have all of our events. So the first one we have is our second legend, which is the Kami's Judgment. So this card is very good. So again, with Trickster's ability, once you take 2 damage, essentially like when your opponent attacks and you've taken 2 damage, you can discard a counter of 2 or less, and then you can use the counter ability. And this one just has the counter ability of choosing one enemy unit and destroying it. So usually we'll never like set this card to play it. It'll just be used for the Trickster ability to just, you know, destroy any unit that we want, especially if like we want to clear like the middle defender slot, so that way we can just start attacking next turn. Next we have 4 Supernatural Citizens Act. So this card is really good because it just heals a card. So again, if you like have it in your hand with Trickster, you don't even have to pay the cost because you're just using it for the ability of your ruler, where you can just discard this card and you get to play the ability without actually paying the 2 costs. So that's why this card is fairly good, and it helps us keep like our Captain Liberties or our Captain Zombies out of our damage, so that way we can recur them from our graveyard later on. Next, there are 2 Normandy joint military exercises. So this lets us bring any military from our graveyard of level 2 or less to from our damage zone into our hand. So pretty much any unit in this deck except for like Saburo. But again, this helps us usually like set up a turn where you want to like set up, maybe bring Captain Liberty to your hand. You could even special summon it with its ability, or you can just use it where you set up a turn where you play this, bring it to your hand to heal a damage, and then you can use like one of your 0 cost units to play as like your other cards for the turn. Next we have 4 G&G armament. So again, this will help us do more damage with like Viktor, as well as a lot of our other event cards. As well as like for like Trickster, if these get stuck in your hand, you can just do it when you get attacked with Trickster, discard it, and it'll end up playing itself because of its counter ability. Next we have is 4 Wild Fury. So this is one of the new cards from set 3. So this is one of our fire powers for our Private Daredevil that we did in the beginning. So the counter ability, or the ability itself, is to like choose one enemy unit and deal 3 damage to it. But if it used the counter ability, it's actually choose an enemy unit and deal 5 damage to it. So again, with G&G Armor, you can do more damage by playing it, or you can do more damage when you counter, such as when you use Trickster's ability, where you discard it to use the counter ability. So like with G&G Armor, by doing 5 damage or more, it means that we can kill pretty much any most units, and then once you hit like the 6 damage, you kill like a lot higher amount of different units, and then so on and so forth when you get more and more armaments. But being able to like play Private Daredevil, and then you bring this back to your hand, even though you've already used up all of your energy, again, you can just use this to discard for Trickster's ability, so that way you can still play it. And then your opponent has to play around that, knowing that they're going to be losing a unit. So if they attack like with their ruler first, they know that they're going to be taking a lot of their units will be taking damage. The only problem with this deck is because this damage is very damage base centered. It means that cards like Aris, especially if that card becomes very popular in the format because of cards like Lucifer, that's why this deck will probably not be very good as time goes on and people start figuring out what cards to use. But if Aris is not like a big part of the format, this card will actually be pretty, or this deck could function pretty well. Then we also have 4 Suppressive Fire. So this is also another, this is a military as well as a firepower. So even if it gets stuck in damage, you could bring it back with like Normandy, or you can just heal it out and then you can use it to like bring it back with Private, Daredevil, and then reuse it to do 2 damage to anything. And again with G&G armament, you can deal more damage for once. So just like to help clear the board for your enemy's units. And the last card we have is 3 Silver Stars. So this card is the counter ability is when you this is from the starter deck of when you hit the CNT, it's just to set the card. But the ability is to choose 1 military card of level 2 or less, which essentially again is almost any unit other than Saburo. And then this lets us put it back into our hand, and then you just replace it with this card. But what that does is it actually allows us to play, like if for example an instance could come up where you have like Normandy in your graveyard, you play Star to get Normandy back, and then you play Normandy to get Star back, and then you can play Star and then get something else back. So that way you actually essentially healed 1 card out of damage using Normandy, as well as this also lets you take out cards like, because it costs 0, it lets you essentially take out like your Captain Liberties, or even like your Private Daredevils or Captain Zombies, and then it lets you play them instantly that turn, or any of our 2-cost military units. So this card is really good. The only reason why it's a 3 of is because of counter space, and because our last counter space was used by our legend slot along with Captain Liberty. But then other than that, that's all for this deck profile. So again, this is mostly just a fun deck, and then hopefully this video goes out on like Veterans Day, because again it is military based. So the idea would be that it's also like paying respect to all of those that are in our military. And then again, the deck list for this deck will be in the description below. And if you want to see other deck types, I will be trying to make more decks, and I'll try to upload, maybe hopefully 1 deck a week, if possible, or if not, I might just like crunch it all at the end whenever I get time, because sometimes work gets in the way. But then because as the filming of this video, it's actually on Veterans Day, so I have off, so that's why I decided to make this video for this deck profile. But I hope you enjoyed it, and then I will hope to see you in the next one.